Good afternoon and welcome back to Football League World TV. We've got another show for you this afternoon. It's our first EFL transfer zone of 2023. We're going to be taking a look at all the latest EFL transfer news and gossip this afternoon. My name is Sam Rourke, the Chief Editor of footballleagueworld.co.uk, and I'm joined by my colleague Toby Wilding to get his thoughts on some of the latest transfer news. Toby, how are we this afternoon, mate?
Yeah, all good, thanks. As you're saying, first show of the transfer window, and it does feel like, as we were just saying off there, a good time to be coming back into these because after a bit of a quiet first week, the rumours are really starting to flow now. So there's going to be plenty to talk about, I think. Yeah,
certainly starting to heat up in the transfer window across all three divisions of the English Football League. We're going to cherry pick a few of these transfer rumours. I always say on this EFL Transfer Zone show, we simply don't have the time to cover every single one, but we've just picked out some of the bigger bits that are worth talking about. Please do, if you're watching this, whether it be on Facebook, Twitter or YouTube, send in your comments in the live chat. Let us know your thoughts on how your club's transfer business has gone so far. And also, we want to hear your reactions on some of the transfer news and rumours we're going to be talking about on this show this afternoon. Right, let's get straight into it. Right, let's start off with arguably one of the most surprising transfer stories to have emerged so far in this January transfer window, not just in the EFL, but in world football in general, you could say. It looks like Manchester United are closing in on a deal to sign Burnley striker Wout Weghorst. He has currently been out on loan with Turkish outfit Besiktas, scoring 9 goals in 18 games. Was also, of course, a member of Louis van Gaal's Holland side in the World Cup. He did score 2 goals against Argentina in the knockout phase of that tournament. But Manchester United and Erik ten Hag are keen to bring Weghorst to Old Trafford. Toby, let's get your first sort of reaction to this story, because myself, I was very surprised by it. He was a player that was relatively uninspiring, really, during his stint at Turf Moor. What was your initial thought on this one?
Yeah, as you say, surprise, very much so. I mean, I don't think there's any getting away from the fact that Manchester United did probably need to bring in a striker in this window, obviously, after the departure of Cristiano Ronaldo back in November. That obviously left them a man light up top, so it seemed like a sort of certainty that they would be going out to sign a striker. But I don't really think that anyone thought it would be Weghorst. You sort of look at a club the size of United, and you would imagine that they're really wanting to sort of go out and lay down a statement in the window in terms of who they're bringing in. And as you say, given what Weghorst did at Turf Moor last season, 2 goals in 20 games for a side that was relegated from the Premier League, doesn't really feel like it fits that bill, in all honesty. That being said, obviously it's a much improved record from that he's produced for Besiktas in Turkey this season. And as you say, those 2 goals in the World Cup quarter-final against Argentina showed the impact he can make, the quality he has. I mean, that finish from that free kick just highlight the composure he can have in tight areas under such pressure. And I think as well, you sort of look at what Erik ten Hag's done since he came into Manchester United. He hasn't really done a lot, if anything, wrong. So if that's the signing that he wants to bring in, then I think really you do have to back him. And again, you sort of look at the reports about maybe this will be a sort of a short-term fix for United, and then maybe they go out and get that sort of bigger name in the summer when there is more time to negotiate and haggle and work things out around how it might impact other deals. So perhaps once you dig a little deeper on a short-term basis, there is maybe an argument that this might not be quite as out there as it seems, even if I don't think going into the window anyone would have answered Wout Weghorst when asked, who do you think United will sign?
Yeah, certainly a surprising one, but also potentially an element of logic to this deal for Manchester United. You only have to look at some of the numbers and statistics that Weghorst has showcased over the last sort of couple of months. In terms of his pressing statistics, something that Ten Hag seemingly likes to have his forwards do, he's very much up there for the sort of strikers across Europe. He's scored more goals than anyone else in that Manchester United team as well. So, yeah, an interesting one. Let us know your thoughts in the comments about Wout Weghorst's potential move to Manchester United from Burnley. Nice little double transition there. Right, let's talk Lewis O'Brien. He is attracting interest from West Bromwich Albion. O'Brien moved to Forest in the summer from Huddersfield Town, but he's found playing time somewhat hard to come by in recent weeks. His starting berth isn't always there. He's been on the bench quite a lot recently. And Carlos Corberán, now in charge of West Bromwich Albion, is keen to bring O'Brien to the Hawthorns for the remainder of the season on loan. Toby, we know how good Lewis O'Brien can be in the second tier. We saw it when he was at Huddersfield Town. He was one of the Championship's standout central midfielders at times. What do you make of this link to West Brom? Because Corberán has really sort of formed a bit of a resurgence at West Bromwich Albion. They're looking very much on the up. Would adding someone like Lewis O'Brien really add to their promotion credentials in your eyes?
Yeah, I think it would. As you say, O'Brien was outstanding in the Championship for Huddersfield last season. And so, it was a massive sort of part of the run to the playoff final that I don't think anyone sort of really saw coming. And so that sort of experience would be huge in that West Brom team, who themselves, after the resurgence under Corberán, are very much in the picture for a top six spot at minimum. And of course, the big thing as well is the fact that it was Corberán in charge of the Terriers when they made it to the playoff final last season. So that sort of reunion as well is sort of a massively exciting part of that, you would imagine, for West Brom supporters. Corberán obviously showed there last season at Huddersfield just how much he can get out of O'Brien, and so you'd think that to have him there trying to do that same job for West Brom that he was doing under him for Huddersfield last season would certainly be a massive boost in that respect. I think it would probably also help in terms of convincing O'Brien to make that move. This is his first shot at the Premier League. It's not something he probably wants to give up lightly, but that prospect of reuniting with a manager he's done so well under in the past could well be sort of quite a tempting prospect for him. So yeah, this is one that to me certainly looks like it could be a good deal for the Baggies.
Yeah, Forest not short of central midfield options. There's a lot of competition that Lewis O'Brien's had to contend with since moving to the City ground. Reports coming out that Forest are looking at Danilo as well to add to their midfield contingent, which would ultimately put O'Brien further down that pecking order. Let's talk about where O'Brien could potentially fit into this Baggy side then, Toby. We've seen Yukuzlu and Jason Malumbi form quite a nice sort of axis in front of that back four at the moment. Would O'Brien be someone you feel could sort of oust one of them two and come straight into that 11, or do you think he'd maybe have to bide his time and potentially start off the bench a couple of times?
Yeah, it's a tough call, that, isn't it? Because as you say, with how well West Brom have been doing under Corberán, it will be hard for him to really justify sort of making a change in that central midfield axis. But he clearly relies on O'Brien. I mean, I was looking at the numbers earlier: 46 starts across the league and playoffs for Huddersfield under him last season. So he's obviously a player he trusts and that he's willing to rely on. And as I say, I think as well, if O'Brien is going to be convinced to make the step back down to the Championship from the Premier League, he's going to have to know that he is going to play and he is going to get those chances to sort of earn himself that opportunity back in the top flight again in the future. So yeah, I do think he would have to play, and I think if they were to make that change, it would probably be for me, Malumbi in the firing line a bit more than Yekushlu. Obviously, I think he's been outstanding since he's come back into West Brom. Can make a real impact, both sort of shielding that defence and going forward, as we saw in the win over Preston. So I think to have that sort of real tangible contribution means that for me it would be Yekushlu and OBrien as sort of the more standout midfield pairing if there was to be a change in there, were OBrien to sort of come to the Hawthorns.
Okay, any West Bromwich Albion fans watching this show, let us know your thoughts in the comments. Would you like to see Lewis O'Brien arrive at the Hawthorns in this January transfer window? Right, let's look at another rumour next. There's a bit of a mini transfer chase going on for AFC Bournemouth attacker Jamal Lowe. Lowe's found it hard to get frequent game time in the Premier League since the Cherries' promotion last term. QPR are leading the race to sign Jamal Lowe in this January transfer window, if certain reports are to be believed. Toby, again, another player somewhat similar to Lewis O'Brien that we know can cut it in the second tier. For QPR, would he be a good addition? Would he? Because he's quite a versatile player, isn't he, Jamal Lowe? He can operate in various attacking roles. I suppose for Neil Critchley, it would give him allow him to, utilise him in any sort of area he'd like to. So for QPR, do you think Jamal Lowe would be a good addition?
I could see this being a good signing. Yeah, I think, as you say, he has done it in the Championship before. He's a versatile player, can bring both goals and assists at this level, which feels to be sort of really what QPR need. At the minute, it's something you feel that they have maybe been lacking from a few of their attacking options this season, and the likes of Tyler Roberts yet to really get going. Lyndon Dykes, obviously the inevitable speculation around his future now with Michael Beale at Rangers, so it might be they need that extra depth sort of in that attacking area. And I think as well, he has got a point to prove. It's not happened for him at Bournemouth, and I think you sort of look at the situation there, the takeover that has happened. It looks as though Bill Foley really sort of wants to make an impression in the transfer window in terms of the sort of additions he wants to bring in at Bournemouth. And obviously, if that's going to happen, that is likely going to mean that other players are going to have to move on. And as you say, with Jamal Lowe not really getting those chances in the Premier League so far this season, he would sort of be one of the obvious names up there for consideration for a move elsewhere. So to me, that does look like one that could work for all parties. And with the sort of that spark that he can provide at this level, it could be really sort of useful for QPR in particular when you consider for me, they haven't quite got going under Critchley in the sort of way I expected them to after he first took over. And you sort of look at some of his comments coming out after that FA Cup defeat to Fleetwood at the weekend. He clearly wasn't happy with what he saw from his side. So that would again suggest he's going to want changes, and having someone with that sort of pedigree that Lowe has from his time in this division could certainly fit nicely for them.
Yeah, I mean, QPR have arguably been guilty of relying too heavily on the likes of Chris Willock and Elias Chair over the last season or two. So bringing in someone like Jamal Lowe could be quite a nice sort of complement to what they've already got in their attacking contingent. So that'll be an interesting one. Jamal Lowe being courted quite heavily by Queen's Park Rangers for a loan move. Any QPR fans in the comments, let us know your thoughts on the potential arrival of Jamal Lowe from AFC Bournemouth. Right, another transfer chase that is taking place in the English Football League right now is to do with Chiedozie Ogbene of Rotherham United. Ogbene's enjoyed a really fine start to the Championship season. 6 goals and 2 assists for Matty Taylor's struggling Miller's side so far. Millwall and Swansea are 2 clubs credited with an interest in the Republic of Ireland, international in this January transfer window. Arguably, Rotherham's most important player. He's been so influential for them over the last couple of seasons. Let's look at the Millwall link first, Toby. We've seen Benik Afobe depart the Den. He's gone over to Dubai. on a permanent deal. There is potentially a void there for another new attacker at Millwall. What do you think about Ogbene potentially arriving? We talked about Jamal Lowe being versatile. Ogbene's sort of a similar sort of remit, isn't he? He can operate, as he has done this season, as a central striker, but can also operate on the flanks as well. So what do you make of this from a Millwall perspective, this interest in Ogbene?
Yeah, I think this would be a good signing for Millwall. As you say, sort of not just this season, but Rotherham's last spell in the Championship has been really sort of impressive. The impact he's been able to make in a sort of a struggling side. So that sort of shows just what he can do, and you feel like potentially there is the chance for that to come to the fore even more in a team such as Millwall, who are sort of pushing things forward further up the division, and it does feel like there's a sort of a bit of a dearth in options now for Gary Rourke's side in attack. Obviously, as you say, the departure of Afobe, Isaac Alafoe as well, moving on to Stockport. You sort of maybe even look back to Jed Wallace moving on back in the summer. They've certainly lost a fair few attacking options in the past few months. So it does feel like that is a gap they maybe need to fill in. Bringing in someone like Ogbene would certainly do that. Obviously, as you say, he offers them a lot of options in terms of where he can be used. And I think as well, obviously, contract situation at Rotherham expiring in the summer. So this is very much their last chance if they are going to cash in on him to do so, which potentially makes this more affordable than it really should be for a player of his quality as well. And so I think that certainly makes this one that is worth pursuing for Millwall. And as you say, with other clubs involved, Swansea, potentially others, it wouldn't be a surprise if there were others, because really, and most clubs in the Championship should probably be looking at him with what he can offer. And as I say, with his contract situation, it does feel like it would be a bit of a coup for Millwall if they managed to get this one done.
Yeah, because one bad injury to someone like Tom Bradshaw, Mill will then have to rely on someone like Tyler Burry, who has shown flashes of real quality, but you can't necessarily rely on him to deliver goals on a consistent basis. And also that Vogelsammer as well, who was brought in, is often being utilised on the wing, not necessarily through the middle. So that need to bring in someone that can play as a number 9, as a centre forward in Ogbene, you feel would be beneficial for all parties. Let's just briefly touch on the Swansea interest, Toby. This has been a more long-standing interest. Swansea have been keen on Ogbene since last summer. They are keen on them again in this window. Lots of speculation surrounding Michael Obafemi as well. Burnley have reignited their interest in the Swans striker. He could well depart. What do you make of Swansea's interest in Ogbene? Could you see it being a good move for all parties here?
Yeah, I think so. Certainly, as you say, for Swansea, if Michael Obafemi does move on, much as we were discussing there with Millwall and Benik Afobe, they will need a replacement. Ogbene offers them that, and it sort of sounds like in the reports that potentially in the past Swansea have almost been priced out of a move for Ogbene by Rotherham's demands. But if Obafemi was now to move on, that does open up the funds that could maybe make this affordable for Swansea. And I think as well, that has sort of been almost a frustration of the fan base over in Wales in recent times, that perhaps the investment hasn't been there that maybe they would have liked. And you sort of get that feeling that, given, as you say, this long-standing interest they've had in Ogbene, it would be another sort of massive kick in the teeth for them if Millwall were to now suddenly swoop in January, sort of all of a sudden, and get this done quickly. It's not going to sort of do anything to sort of ease the frustrations of those Swansea fans, and it will only put more pressure on them in terms of what deals they are able to get done. So I do think, as though it does seem like there is a bit of pressure mounting on Swansea now, given their historic interest, to sort of really make sure they see that through ahead of a rival.
Yeah, absolutely. Any Rotherham fans, Swansea fans, Millwall fans watching this, get yourself in the comments. What do you make of the Chiedozie Ogbene situation. Millwall and Swansea both credited with an interest in the 25-year-old this month. Also, just a reminder to anyone watching this, let us know your thoughts in the comments on your club's transfer business so far. Who does your club need to sign? What positions do you need to strengthen? We do want to hear from you, so get yourself in the live chat and we will get your comments up on the show. Right, let's look at another rumour next. Right, this feels like a player we talk about on every single EFL Transfer Zone show every season. That is Norwich City's Max Aarons. He is attracting interest from Premier League side Fulham in this window. They have been heavily linked with a move for Arsenal defender Cedric Soares, but it seems like that deal has now collapsed, and they could well turn their attentions to Norwich City's defender Max Aarons. Right, Toby, let's get your thoughts on Max Aarons and a potential move to Fulham. It's felt for a while that the Premier League should be where Max Aarons is playing his football. He's made over 50 appearances in the Premier League for Norwich City. He knows what it takes to play at that sort of level. Do you think a move to Fulham could be quite a good solution for him?
Yeah, I do. I mean, if we were to go back to this, 2 or 4 years ago, and we're talking about, players from the Championship potentially moving to Fulham at this stage to get a Premier League opportunity, you would be saying it's a risk because they look dead certs to come straight back down again. And this time around, that is just absolutely not the case. I've been so impressed with what Fulham have done this season in the Premier League, and I think it's sort of testament to how they've responded to their relegations in the last couple of seasons. It's almost sort of a model for clubs coming up now, and that maybe you do have to brace yourself for a tough period, but if you accrue those finances in the right way and save them and then spend them at the right time, you can eventually put together a squad that can make you competitive again in the top flight, and that looks like what Fulham's done, and therefore it does seem like it would be an attractive move for Aarons to sort of go and be part of that, and it does feel potentially like it's one where he sort of maybe could get opportunities as well. Kevin and Barbu, maybe one of the few sort of summer signings that hasn't quite worked out for Fulham yet in that right back position, so there is potentially a sort of a void there, especially with Kenny Tete going to be entering the last year of his contract in the summer as well. So there may well be openings, and as you say, Aarons is certainly going to feel like he's a player who should be playing at Premier League level. So yeah, that could work for all parties. Whether Norwich are going to want to let him go is another matter. But as I say, Fulham have shown they're willing to spend. So it may be the case that they just are going to, if they do move for Aarons, make that sort of bid that Norwich can't say no to. Especially now that Norwich, unlike in their sort of past few years in the Championship, don't look the bankers for promotion that they have been, which again is going to make it harder for them to sort of convince players to stay if this interest does develop. So yeah, this is sort of one that could potentially make sense for all involved.
Yeah, Max Aarons still only 23 years old. He's a player we've been speaking about for many a season now, but still a fantastic age. He could be a great signing for someone like Fulham to feature in their team and develop as a player. Any Norwich fans watching this, get yourself in the comments. What do you make of Max Aarons' current situation at Carrow Road? Fulham do have an eye on the Norwich defender, if certain reports are to be believed. Right, we've got 2 more transfer rumours coming up for you next. Staying on the topic of Fulham, Huddersfield Town are plotting a loan move for Fulham winger Anthony Knockaert. Knockaert has been out on loan in Greece with Volos. He scored 1 goal and provided 1 assist over in Greece so far this term. 31 years old now. Huddersfield are keen to bring him in on loan. Toby, what do you make of this one? Because for me, it feels like Anthony Knockaert is somewhat past his best. We've seen what he can do and what he can deliver in the Championship and in the EFL, but we haven't seen that over the last sort of few seasons. He didn't feature much for Fulham last season in the Championship, only a handful of appearances then. His loan stint over in Greece doesn't seem, from the face of it, to be very productive for him as a player. What do you make of this Huddersfield interest? Do you think he could come back into the Championship and make an impact for what is a struggling Terriers side?
I think that would be a difficult ask of him, if I'm being honest. As you say, it's what, 5 years ago now since he had that one sort of spectacular season for Brighton in the Championship, when he played such a big role for them in getting them promoted, and that sort of pushed him into everybody's spotlight. And then, he's never really backed that up wherever he's been, in the Premier League, Championship, or now out in Greece. So I feel like in a Terriers side that, it doesn't really feel like they've got a lot of goals coming from elsewhere. It'd be a bit of a risk to sort of rely on him to be that man who's going to offer that spark, in all honesty. And I think as well, the other thing is, you look at Knockaert, you look at the clubs that he has been at, and sort of the investment they've had to make in him, even if it was a loan move. I can't imagine that'll be a particularly cheap one. Certainly in terms of wages, when you sort of consider some of the reports that there has been in the past about, sort of the price of his contract. So I think when you sort of look at the situation Huddersfield are in, maybe in terms of what they are sort of able to spend, and what the suggestions are about what they can spend. Obviously, Mark Fotheringham just before January said that they weren't really in a position where they could, spend money on players, which sort of makes you question whether, with that sort of pretty underwhelming record that Knockaert's had over the sort of past few years since that season with Brighton, whether it would really be worth putting what funds they have into a deal for him. So yeah, for me, this would feel like a bit of a risky move, maybe in a few different ways for Huddersfield if they did make it.
Yeah, it's certainly a gamble, this signing, it feels like. But, if Fotheringham was able to get the best out of Anthony Knockaert, then there is, there's a serious live wire, a serious spark there that could potentially sort of provide a bit of a resurgence for Huddersfield Town. Again, a bit of a long shot given how Knockaert's fared over the last couple of seasons. But if they manage to get that Knockaert that we saw excel for Brighton 4 or 5 years ago, then it could be an astute signing. But again, it's a lot of unknowns with this deal as to how Knockaert currently is, what sort of shape he's in, and his match fitness and so forth. But anyone watching this, let us know your thoughts on Huddersfield Town's interest in Anthony Knockaert. They are eyeing up a loan move for the Fulham player. He is currently out on loan in Greece. Right, one more piece of EFL transfer news coming up for you next. A number of Championship sides are looking at Leeds United striker Joe Gelhart in this January transfer window. Wigan Athletic are heavily linked with a move for the young white striker. Swansea has well. I've also been credited with a link with him. Has featured somewhat sparingly this term for Leeds United in the Premier League. Has made 14 appearances, but only one of them being a start. He was used quite a bit last season as Leeds United stayed up in the Premier League. He ended up being quite a key figure for Jesse Marsh's side near the latter end of the Premier League season last season. But Leeds have given him the green light to move out on loan, and Wigan are one of the prominent names linked with a move for him. Joe Gelhart, of course, was at Wigan before that move to Leeds United, so he'd be a familiar face around the DW Stadium. Toby, let's get your thoughts then on the Wigan interest in Joe Gelhart. Gelhart, to me, looks like a player who's got a lot of quality, perhaps a little bit raw still, but he's got all the sort of core attributes you want from a striker and has shown it in the Premier League. Is this what Wigan need? Because they are rock bottom of the Sky Bet Championship as it stands, have been quite reliant on Will Keane for a lot of their goals this season. Could Joe Gelhart offer an alternative dimension to Kolo Touré's attack in your eyes?
Yeah, I think he would. I think you go back to his first spell at Wigan, and even then at such an early stage of his career, he did feel like he was a big threat for them in the Championship. He sort of maybe didn't at that time come through massively in terms of his direct goal contributions, but he was still a player that a lot of Wigan fans I know were very excited about. And he was a player who, as I say, even at that time, he felt like he sort of gave that team a lift when he was on the pitch. And so I think obviously he could do that again now. The sight of him back in a Wigan shirt, I think would be huge for the club. Sort of first off, from that sort of mentality perspective, the lift it would give the DW Stadium to have him back, but also from the footballing sense, because I say he was a threat the last time he was at Wigan, and since then he's been out at Leeds. He's been training with Premier League quality players. He's been playing against Premier League quality players. He's made that sort of impact on occasions. He's got a few goals, got a few assists, and so that is only going to put him in even better stead to make that impact if he does come back to the Championship. And I think that would be hugely important for Wigan, especially with looking at the way they use Will Keane at the minute. Quite often he seems to be playing in more of a number 10 role, so you could almost have Gelhart up ahead of him, and having those sort of two scorers on the pitch rather than just the one could add sort of quite a significant extra dimension to their attack that they might need to get themselves out of trouble. And I think as well, you sort of look at the likes of Swansea. They're probably going to have their eyes set up on, at the very least, top half, potentially playoff push in the second half of the season. So if Wigan, despite being bottom of the Championship, can sort of go out and pick them to this signing, that too would be a sort of quite a big thing, I think, for them. So yeah, for Wigan, it's obviously for me one that they should very much be looking to try and get done.
Yeah, Swansea also in the race to sign Joe Gelhart, but you'd imagine in terms of for Leeds United, it's all about getting Joe Gelhart minutes on the pitch, and at Wigan you'd imagine he'd get a lot more than at Swansea, given the strikers Swansea currently have at their disposal, Joel Pirro and Michael Obafemi at the moment. Wigan, you'd imagine Joe Gelhart would go straight into that starting 11 on paper. But there we go. Joe Gelhart attracting interest from the Sky Bet Championship. Wigan, Athletic and Swansea, two teams linked with a move for the Leeds United forward. Right, well, that's it from EFL Transfer Zone here on Football League World TV this afternoon. We could have carried on for hours. There is so much going on in the English Football League right now, transfers-wise. But don't fret, we've got another EFL Transfer Zone show coming up for you on Thursday, where we will, again, reconvene and look at what's going on across the EFL transfer landscape. Toby, thanks very much for joining me this afternoon. Did enjoy that one. If you haven't already, please do subscribe to Football League World TV on YouTube. We are closing in on 1,500 subscribers. We really do appreciate all the support here on the YouTube channel. So please do stick a like in below this video and subscribe to the channel. We've got so much exciting EFL content coming up for you on this channel over the coming weeks and months. But from myself and Toby, we shall see you soon.